SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. It's Jay, Stone Go, Gary Fife, Joe Jifkidos. What do we got here? Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedgewedskis. Welcome to our program again here on a nice, actually interesting winter day in beautiful downtown Omogi. We've got a little break from winter weather, so I'm really enjoying it, but darn, I'm still pretty chilly. Anyway, let's get on with it. We have a couple of folks joining us in studio. First of all, my colleague here, Angel Ellis. Welcome, Angel.
Good morning. It's good to be back.
It's appreciate you coming down. And our guest today is Brenda Golden. Whoa. Hold on there, Gary. Brenda Golden, who's here to talk about the issue that's garnering a lot more attention these days, missing and murdered Indian women. Mm-hmm. Now, you've been covering the story.
Yeah. We've been following along some really exciting legislation that our guest Brenda has helped kind of raise awareness about, and one of them she even had a hand in helping author a little bit. And I'm going to let her kind of explain her role in that. And she's also Miss Golden is Mvskoke Creek, and she's an attorney, and she has been working with the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women Indian Capital Chapter, and they're out of Anadarko. And so she's got a lot of good information for us, and we're going to just first start off with the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women epidemic, and let's just kind of brief folks who may not know, which it's hard to imagine folks not knowing, but I guess there are still those out there who don't realize the epidemic situation that we're in. Can you kind of take off with that a little bit?
Sure. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous, I call it people, MMIP, because, men also go missing. Actually, has been around since the colonizers first got here and took Pocahontas, but it started getting attention from recent communities across Canada all the way down to Mexico. Canada has a highway of tears that hundreds and hundreds of women have gone missing on that highway because it's like in a desolate area. And that first was everybody's like, well, hey, that's happening here too, and then it broadened out to the United States, where a lot of MMIW chapters came into existence. And the reason it was brought here to Oklahoma is because there is some data that shows Oklahoma is 10th in the United States for missing and murdered Indigenous people. And that was based on a study from the Urban Indian Health Institute. But anyway, back to, in the last 20 years, we had the Red Dress movement, the Highway of Tears movement, and then in the United States, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's and People's movement kind of take off to address this crisis of hundreds, thousands of Native Americans that go missing and are killed every year. The problem with knowing exactly how many are missing or have been murdered is that there was no systematic approach to putting that data into the FBI crime database.
Right, so no one's really tracking.
No one had been tracking
all
it,
this information. So we can't come out and say right now there's X amount of them that have gone missing, and from here, or there, and really, like you would normally just track crime or problems, people, have access to saying like this area is a high crime or high burglary. There's nothing like that for missing and murdered Indigenous people right now. Can you talk a little bit about the Red Alert bill that has come up in our state capital's legislature and what it could mean to positively impact those epidemic numbers of people disappearing, people being harmed, people being taken from, their communities?
Sure. Well, let me just preface that by saying Native American groups started doing self-reporting databases, and that's kind of how they arrived at a $6,000 figure of missing and murdered indigenous people in the United States.
Right.
Oklahoma had like 178 missing and murdered indigenous people, and one of the issues with missing Native people are that law enforcement agencies and police departments, when the family or a loved one would go in to report that person missing, they would not get the attention that they thought they should have. And I don't know if it's perception, but we heard this over and over at the state capitol during the interim study that they would try to go report their loved one missing, and the police department or the police officer would say, well, wait a few days. They're probably just out having a good time, or they're out, and so a red alert would address that by if a missing indigenous person goes missing under suspicious, or they're in the proximity of a dangerous person, and you can demonstrate that they are probably Native American or indigenous, the red alert would go into action.
Let me ask this question, and I don't mean any harshness by it, but I don't want to insult anyone, but the legislation, if it becomes law, then would sort of force law enforcement agencies to take on these cases, to make them more prominent and get more action as opposed to the past where they, as you say, take a few days for them to sort of get around to it and say, all right, do it now.
Well, actually, this doesn't force the law enforcement agencies to do anything beyond take the report and issue the alert. The alert pattern's the same exact Amber Alert and Silver Alerts that are already in place. So this to implement would be so cost effective. It's just adding another designation to the already alert systems. And so the red alert wouldn't force the police department to do anything more than to issue that alert, and then the law enforcement agencies would and then it would alert the media.
Okay. Let me introduce another one of our guests who's come onto the show, and this is Ngozi Wynn, and he has a pretty significant and interesting role in positively impacting this epidemic too. And I just wanted to welcome him in and say hello, and we're gonna get to him and be asking him some questions too about the things that he does. So good morning, and thanks for being here.
It's Jay.
And on the red alert legislation, so as you were saying, like, it's not creating a whole new system. It's not creating a massive cost. It's just saying, take this information, report it as you would in the system that's already present. So it seems a pretty cost-effective, way to address it, right?
And the bottom line on the red alert is if you see something, say something. And the more people know that there's something amiss, the red alert, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling. I haven't had enough coffee. Amber Alert and Silver Alert both have the signs on the public highways. They're announced on the television. The picture of that person is put up. All of that could go into effect, and someone might spot a kidnapped. And the reason this is so important is because Oklahoma is a crossroads for human trafficking. We have I-40, we have I-35 that split the state and go coast to coast, go nation to nation, and someone could be out of this state within 2 hours.
Yeah,
Gone.
definitely. And one of the things that you had pointed out earlier in one of our previous interviews when we were talking about this is you can be out of the country in a day from Oklahoma. You can be gone. So
if you see something, say something, then that's what the alert is about.
What you got?
Back to your question, also the cleat training.
Well,
It's
yeah.
going to make a big difference too in how they handle the cases.
And that's,
and the
we've actually
respect
got
they
some
give these
good news
families.
on that
They know
cleat
how to-
trading.
how to act. That goes back to
That's
his,
another House
and then
bill.
handling it and how they're going to handle it. And I think that's going to make a big impact
If we
too.
could get them enacted in tandem together.
Yeah.
There are three bills addressing MMIW/P.
So red alert's just one component of it, and then
Yes.
there's the legislation about cleat training, and it designates that officers are already going to cleat training. We're not going to ask you to take any extra time, but the bill actually asks that a part of that training, 1 hour of it, be designated to strictly train on the missing, murdered Indigenous people problem, cultural kind of issues, and get officers familiar with that. And it can be a part of the training already in place, so that these officers, when they are, on the front lines of interacting with the folks, they know exactly what to do, what questions to ask, kind of thing. And can you give us some good updates about that? I just seen a post on Facebook about it, and I was pretty excited about that one.
Well, it's actually made it to the committee agenda, and for those who aren't familiar,
Yes.
the if you watch the National Council here at Creek Nation, we have the same process. You have to get a bill introduced in the committee, and then the committee has to approve it to pass it on to the full. In this case, it would be out of committee, passed to the full House. If the full House passes it on to the Senate side, the Senate has to pass it. So it's a little lengthier there. But anyway, making it on the committee agenda for first reading is huge, because if we can get it out to committee, then that is crucial before the end of February, because if we can't get these bills heard before the end of February in committee, they're dead. They're gone for this legislative session. And we want to ride the momentum that's going on nationally. There's 8 other states that are doing legislation. The federal government's got a task force, and there's laws introduced in Congress. And so the CLEAT training, is, again, in committee tomorrow, House Bill 2848. So contact your legislator and tell them let's get that bill moving.
Mm-hmm. In tandem with those other, I'm sorry, did you have something?
And get the stricter laws passed, everything, because they just get slaps on the wrist right now. The suspects do.
It's pretty easy for a person to have done something harmful, and then you see, as much as you see the stories of someone reported missing or murdered, you see the reports of this person spent a year in jail, or several months, or none at all. That's kind of a critical thing compounding. It's not as important a crime to harm an Indigenous person as it is anyone else, and they're seeing that kind of play out over and over again in those scenarios. One other major, or there's more than one, but there's another big House bill that's coming, or that has the ability to go to the floor but hasn't yet, is Ida's Law. I just was watching the news last night, and I see them do the in-depth backstory on how Ida's Law, the name behind that. And can you give us some info about Ida's Law and what it's designated to do?
Okay, well, Ida's Law is named after a Cheyenne Arapaho lady who went missing in 2015 named Ida Beard. And I watched the news channel, the news piece as well, where she said her mother left and said bye and just never came back, and that was unusual for her, and that would have triggered a red alert. But instead, we have gone all this time without any news about Ida's Law, and the legislation introduced called Ida's Law, House Bill 3352, would establish a missing person specialist at the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. That would take about $55,000 a year out of as a budget for that person. And their whole role would be to coordinate communication with the law enforcement agencies between the tribal jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, and federal jurisdiction, which is a huge problem in Indian country.
So of all the 3 laws that we've talked about this morning so far, this one is the one that actually has a dollar amount hinged to it, and it's $55,000 around that of the entire state's budget. It doesn't seem like a massive investment, and it could. Can you talk about the jurisdictional problems that we face when we're looking for folks, and what this position could do? You might have some insights on that first.
You can't really, you say $55,000, but you can't really put a price. So you ask these families what they would pay to have somebody to jump through these loopholes, through county jurisdictions, through state jurisdictions, through federal jurisdictions. They'd probably pay you $1 million just so they could get an answer. Just so they can get an answer. That's not even saying if we could find them, but just if they could get an answer or a flyer printed out. You have no idea how hard that is for us to do that, or just to get the families down there to these sites and the gas money that it takes. That could be somebody that could help lobby for that money. True. Because this comes out of everybody's own pocket.
Right now it does.
Yeah.
If they go searching. So if they go searching. Let me just tell you a little bit about Jacob here. In the last 3, 4, 5 years. I met Jacob after Standing Rock, and we started a camp called Wealaka. We've kind of gone underground, but Jacob's done, sacred site. He's gone out and helped people bring them where sacred sites, and has taken a woman home back to South Dakota after Standing Rock that got stranded here in Oklahoma as well. I mean, he's got a lot of active efforts in searching for women, and that's why I wanted him here today, because he has been on several searches that maybe we can talk about a little bit later, where the families have to get to their own resources, or these groups out there have to get their own resources to go search en masse for these missing.
Now, Jacob, is it right? Are you affiliated with any law enforcement agency?
No.
No, and so you take on this work as a volunteer, as someone.
Yes, sir.
What drives you? I think. What's the motivation?
Of being one of these families. I've had to talk about this, but twice. Being one of these families. My sister was my first MMIW. Tree of Wind, and talking about stricter laws. Her kidnapper, Corey Keith Gregory, is free today. He served time. He was captured along with his mom and dad, who was helping him keep her there, and then got out later and committed the same crime and went back to jail and had another 5th gun charge, and he's out right now. Corey Keith Gregory. So we need these stricter laws, and I know what it was like. We didn't have a red alert. We didn't have social media really back then either. It was just us on the ground. And then Tulsa County intervened. She had actually jumped from his vehicle and was hung up by it, and he drug her 2 blocks, which caused a rod in her leg and pins. So this platform is also going to go deeper than that, because these victims and the families also need counseling. It goes further than just finding them, because with this came my sister's addiction, and the cancer that she has now. So.
But I think, Jacob, don't you have some specific training? You've gone to train.
Yeah. I've done SARS training, search and rescue training. I've trained out with the Air Force in Colorado with their rescue cooperative coordinating. I've done canine training with Paul Markham and from Cadaveras to on site with canines. But we all need this training, and we're also having a training at the end of March, the weekend of March. I've talked about it a couple of times to do man tracking, and I'm looking for people to come, and maybe even somebody sponsor a bill to pay for it. Right now it's $350 a person, but if we get a group together, we could probably get it less. And
who's putting on that training?
It's a buddy of mine. I really don't want to say right now because I don't want him flooded with things.
All right. So he's. That's why I wanted him to talk a little bit about what kind of search and rescue training.
So you've gone through these trainings, and you've helped find people. I am, as a parent, as a woman, am concerned from here on out, whether or not these laws make it, which we hope they do. What is one of the critical components and advice that you can give, having been on the side that searches for a person, for people who want to keep their loved ones safe, or maybe they're in the situation where they need to take immediate action? What's the critical pieces of information people need to find each other? What are the questions you would be asking a family?
If somebody was looking for another family member, and they, are you asking for prevention? Or are you asking for?
or say like tomorrow, if my sister-in-law is missing, what is it that I can try to figure out and bring to authorities, bring to someone helping the search, that's going to be the critical elements of information that could get her brought back?
What would they need to know?
Unfortunately, right now you'd have to contact your local law enforcement, and then that agency would take a description and everything. They'd want to know everything from autism to dementia. Or you got it. It's a whole profile that you do, and then once they do that and get it turned in, like say if it's the search and rescue or Department of Emergency Management, we usually have profiles, and we can use that profile. And if you have an area maybe they were at, you want to give all the information, last contact, last even on social media, last post you made, last person that said she was with her. You want to try and narrow all those down, because when you get to law enforcement, 9 out of 10, they might ask you some of those questions, but right now you're going to be the one that's going to do all the footwork. If she mentioned she was
dating someone new, or if she's with a friend and they're going somewhere and maybe their destination was but they never arrive, or something like
Yes,
that.
you want to write everything down before people forget too. The sooner you can do it, the better as well.
So if the family got
they were
together
wearing-
and the cousin heard, oh well, she talked to me at this time and said this, you got
that puts a timeline down. That also puts a timeline down for us.
It sounds
too.
like a lot of the prevention or a lot of the positive outcomes is going to come from communication with, like, family members who are looking.
When it comes to MMIW, the first prevention is us men. This is our fault. Male entitlement did this. So we can't just teach our sons. We have to be that way too, because a lot of times I see men saying something and then acting a different way around their sons, and that's not how this is going to work. We have to take responsibility. This is a new era.
Now, in making a statement like that, what comes to my mind is we're going to have to change the entire structure of the way we deal with each other, particularly in a family and between men and women.
Yes.
It's like the old days of, man is a king in his castle kind of thing is well, I can think of lots of words for it.
Well, that doesn't go too far back, because 9 of the pyramids in Egypt are dedicated to women. So when you say the old days, how far are you going back?
Right.
And Mvskoke Nation is a matriarch, so how far are you going back?
Yeah, I remember cartoons of cavemen dragging a woman by the hair kind of thing.
This was Catholicism and male entitlement.
Uh-huh.
And the second prevention is to tell your loved ones, regardless of what they've done, they can come home.
Now,
They can come home.
Let's talk about progress there for a second while we're on that. There's been a lot of attention being paid to the changing structures of our society, where women are assuming more of their rightful place in jobs and pay scales and recognition and things like that. Now, do you have a feel for that? I mean, have you thought, or maybe could you describe the changes that you've seen?
I'll tell you this, as a man and being a searcher, I was limited to the things I could do in this situation. These women have took it way further than we could, all the way up to legislation, and they care. I see, on certain things when it comes to women's rights, I think men need to sit down. When it comes to their equality, I think men need to sit down. So I kind of step back from that question, but I think they need more than equal rights to us, because they're sacred. I've never seen a male species give birth.
Right.
Russell Means said that, and I took that deeply. And water's sacred, because without both of them, if you've ever said water is life, then you have to say so are females. And that's how we see that. And we need to start bringing that forward.
Yeah,
more.
water is about 70% of the human body.
Yeah.
And
And more in a female.
I'd just like to mention, as being part of the very first chapter established here in Oklahoma, the MMIW Indian Capital. My friend Sharice reached out to me and said, how do I set up a 501c3? She knew as an attorney, and I just sent her the forms and stuff and said, hey, you got to fill this in, you got to have bylaws. Anyway, since that time, here in Oklahoma, I am so proud to see so many men. There are men that have stood up and come to our rallies, come to the Capitol. They've gone out on search rescues, and the men in Oklahoma, the native men and non-native men too, have stepped up. I must
With
say.
many allies now in this, yeah.
Well, that's an encouraging thought, that the thinking, this archaic thinking that, I am king, is gone by the wayside, or is going. We still have a long way to go, I would
We
say.
do.
Can I back you up just 1 second? Maybe we might have to take a break in a minute. But when you talked about letting your loved ones know they can come home, how critical do you think that is to this? Because I think that one of the themes we see over and over is someone has maybe gotten into a situation where they're feuding with family or something, and they feel like they have to be stuck here with somebody who might be doing them
Abusive.
great harm mentally, physically. Can you kind of just elaborate on that concept a little bit more? What have you heard in your experiences?
That's it. They think that they don't have anybody, and if they're listening to this now, and you're in a situation like that, call Brenda Golden, call Warrior Women's Society, call Olivia Gray, call Jen, because
we have a family
they love
violence
you.
prevention center.
Yeah, and we have a prevention center, and that is a hard case, is that they get out there and these men get them strung out, keep them drunk, keep them high, and isolate them from their family. So then we really don't know where they're at. And then they think they can never come home because they're this way. Or they might have done something last time they came home and relapsed and went back out and were told, don't ever come back. Well, your family was just upset. They didn't mean that. You're loved, and if you think that you can't call them, call the women I just mentioned, call American Indian Movement, Indian Territory, Mary, Shelby, call them. There's people out there that'll help you. They have housing to get you out of that situation. We will come and get you at night. We'll put you in a safe house. We'll get all your stuff packed up. And law enforcement will help us with that if we need to call.
And Jacob has done that.
And yes, and it all stays anonymous. We don't put that out there because that's also another fear part. They don't want everybody to know, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But we got to get them out of there before they become missing and murdered.
Right.
Does anyone have any data on like numbers? A feel for how big or how small perhaps the problem is within the Mvskoke Nation? Has that ever been compiled?
I don't know specific numbers about Mvskoke Creek Nation. I can tell you, though, that Tulsa was ranked like in the top 10 for cities that were of Native women going missing, and that is within the Creek Nation jurisdiction. So you would,
and that's up there with the reservations.
Well, you always hear about this happening in like South Dakota or something.
It's right here. We've been compared to Alaska. We've had so many, and now our ratio has gone up in murdered and missing. Other places in the states, when we turn in that information, it's been dementia has gone up. Since hikers and stuff now have phones and GPS, that's gone down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then over here in Oklahoma, we've gone up in murdered and missing. I think in August we had like 320. Like I could have searched every day for one person missing. Every day I could have put aside for a whole year.
Wow.
Before the year was up.
Have either of you ever talked to one of the perpetrators and found out why they do this kind of thing? Is that something that's ever happened to either of you? I know it's kind of a tough question. That maybe.
Well, I'm an attorney, and there's certain cases that I just won't even. And this is one of them. I don't take domestic violence, men hurting women. Mm-hmm. I don't take those kind of cases of any sort because I just don't. It's better for me not to go there.
Sure. Well, I tell you what. Why don't we take a short pause here, and we'll be back. And I understand. Angel, you were down at the demonstration at the Capitol, and we'll talk about that when we come back.
Hear that? That's the sound of hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
Talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
Who am I? Am I Native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on The Brew, 1240 AM and 106.3 FM here in beautiful downtown Okmulgee. We're discussing the subject of missing and murdered Indian women and persons. Let's change that in persons. Because, you just don't think of men being in that situation, but that's often and too often the case.
I'm seeing the reports where people are missing their sons now. And there was one just recently of a young man who went looking for, he's like probably teenager, he went looking for his mom, and now he's missing. And it's just really spread to everyone. But Monday we got to visit with a lot of Native folks who all converged together at the state capitol, advocating for these pieces of legislation to be passed. That's where, which I'd met Brenda before, but it's where I met Ngozi, and it was a really I mean, it was powerful to sit there and listen to the stories that were told, and the drums were playing, and people were advocating. So if you want to walk me through, like, some of the day, like, the organizers, some of the people that spoke, and the powerful messages that they brought, if you wanted to highlight that for us, Brenda?
Sure. The Cheyenne Arapaho tribe, first of all, had planned a lobby day for Ida's Law because that's named after one of their tribal citizens. And MMIW Indian Capital said, well, they're going to be on the inside, so let's plan something outside so that the whole group of us can all be there in mass showing support for the 3 bills. MMIW Indian Capital was joined by Matriarch, AIM Indian Territory, the MMIW Chickasaw chapter, AIM Northeast chapter, Woman Warrior Society, and Noise. And the focus was, we're going to make some noise outside, but we had printed up the bills and also all the committee members, and we were urging everyone, go inside, talk to as many legislators as you can, lobby for these bills. That's what we're here for, and we had, of course, I mentioned Sharice Redbone did a powerful words to the Redstone Singers, who is composed of Jim Ankew Sr., and Terry Zotai, to mention a few. They came down as our host drum. Oh, they were incredible. And I believe, I called my cousin Ben Yahola, and I said, hey, bring your PA. He's like, I'm going out of state on a job. He put it off and came and supported.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. Ben's kind of cool like that.
Yeah. He was there, Roberto Mendoza. I really can't even think of all the people who spoke because I was just so hyped on,
It was a hyped event. So,
but let me give a plug to the Mvskoke Creek Nation. I have to, because that Friday before, I had called a week in advance and asked for a meeting with Chief Hill, and they were like, well, he's traveling all week. How about next week? No, I want him there this week.
Yeah, he just came in from D.C. Yeah, and so you got in to talk to him
and asked him, hey, can the Creek Nation support this lobby day at the Capitol? And he brought in Greg Anderson, Speaker Hicks, and we talked about ways that the Creek Nation could support. I said, can you please get some transportation for folks that want to go? This is so important. Yes, we'll commit a bus and vans. I said, can you please send the flag with me to show that the Creek Nation supports this? Yes. I said, can you please issue something, a statement in support? Yes. And he said, and I'll also email the other chiefs. And Chief Hill followed through on all of those promises. We had a big bus. We were the only ones there with a big bus of people that brought Mvskoke citizens to
Awesome. That's great to hear. Like on the fly, like on a Friday, wrangling that up before a Monday. So I've never been to a legislative rally at the Capitol before, and I went home leaning in my car. Just saying. Just saying. Talent I learned while I was there, and it was just really exciting to be with folks who are compassionate and care, and were so open and willing to tell their stories. We had so
She
many
got the bug, you see it. It's in her. Look, she's ready to go.
I've been telling all my friends, I'm like, if I disappear, I've not gone anywhere. I've just joined AIM, sorry. I'm probably not cut out for that, but it's a nice thought. When I grow up someday, maybe. But it was really great to be with the folks, and the energy there was really good. And it sounds like with this bill being pushed through on into committee, that it might have done some good. And so what really I wanted to kind of dedicate this part of the program for, like, what we can do going forward on these other laws. Like, what's the most critical component? Because like you said, if they're not adopted by the end of, or if there's not action on them by the end of February, right, they're gone. We miss out on this opportunity to have this wonderful, like, really strong trifecta of legislation that could be helping out Indigenous people. And so what's the most important thing for those listening right now to do if they want to take action right now?
Call their legislator, and that would be Scott Fettgatter for those of us that are in Okmulgee, and Roger Thompson, who's a senator. There's also a Native American caucus that is Cullen Walk, W-A-L-K-E. I can't. If you call up the state legislature, House of Representatives, and ask, the operator will connect you. He's the chair of the Native American caucus, and call the committee chairs, and I'm sorry, I should have had that pulled up.
I think I have
Public Health Committee, Public Safety Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. All of those three bills, they couldn't all be in one committee. No, they have to be in three different committees.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I do have the Public Safety Committee here.
I just posted that today about the cleat training. That's the one that has the cleat training in it.
So the important thing really is to reach out, let the people at the Capitol know that you, the citizen, the voter, want something.
Yeah, call your rep.
Call in the reps.
And I'd just like to point out that we're not asking for any special treatment. We're not asking to have some kind of special law just for us. Think about this as saving lives. Think about this as saving someone's life. And that red alert doesn't mean that, we're not going to ask for a CDIB or enrollment card. And it could save so many lives by stopping this human trafficking.
Let me jump in and ask, what has been the reaction from legislators? I know it's early in the process, but are they warm to the idea, the ones that you've contacted? They are interested? They say, no, just those blankety-blank Indians raising hell again. Have you had any kind of indication of the reception of this effort?
Well, for the most part, Ida's Law and the cleat training have gotten a warmer reception than the red alert, because I get this sarcastic response about us asking to be having a special designation or a race-based designation for just Indians, and I'm like, but we didn't create this problem. And this is addressing a problem that the dominant society has created about us. And we're just asking you to fix it.
I think it's important here to remind those folks and other listeners that no, this isn't a special designation. It's not a race-based designation. It is a sign of the political relationship between tribal governments and the federal government. Nobody else has that except Native American people. There is no Bureau of African American Affairs. Yeah. There's no Bureau of Asian American Affairs, but by gosh, there is a Bureau of Indian Affairs, and that symbolizes the relationship, and it proves the federal government believes in it, tribal governments believe in it, and it's there. Anyway,
So
enough of my
basically,
smell.
that's the pushback is.
Just they're kind of like crab walking backwards on that kind of an issue. What can we look for in terms of what are the resources out there? I'm the worrying hen mom out here, who's like, I gotta inform my kids.
You should.
And
you should be worried.
I
should be scared.
Yeah. Well, and I was the child who was brought up in the time of Adam Walsh and watching America's Most Wanted. And my parents were very, cognizant of...
How many Native American children do you see on that channel?
That was exactly the thing that my dad pointed out to me. He was like, you don't see Indian
people.
kids on here.
Yeah, or people.
He was like, because you are not in this system and you aren't the priority, it's up to you. And he pointed that out to us as children.
Wow.
That and I lived in a place where people wanted to pull off the highway and do bad things to people. We experienced crimes happening in just rural Oklahoma. And so he was cognizant of it. He was teaching that to us. And so what are some resources that other hovering hen moms can turn to, and what can parents do? I always adopted that talk to me no matter what policy with my kids. I'm like, if you're somewhere you don't want to be, call me. I'm coming. If you are drunk or you don't want me to see you in that state, don't matter. I'm coming to get you. Safety first. We'll talk about the other stuff later. But what can we look for when it comes to specifically Native Americans being safe and keeping each other safe? I'm looking for the resources.
teaching them to be aware of their surroundings. Maybe put them in a local self-defense class too, so they have that ability at least, and that encouragement, and knowing that they could probably be able to escape. But I think that is definitely something, and a lot of nations do that in their reservations. They do teach self-defense now, and they are teaching it to the little kids, so they will know it when they're older, or even as little children. But definitely, and there's things now that they're putting for kids where you can put your child on something so the state will have it. So if something does happen, they'll have that information to spread sooner.
They have the fingerprints and things that.
Yeah, I would take anything that's available to you right now. I would do that because this is like cancer. There's no upper class, middle class, lower class to this. Anybody can be taken and will be taken. And if you're indigenous right now, nobody really cares.
The scary thing is that our population has high risk already because of the factors of socioeconomic issues, possible abuse in their background, historical trauma, and their parents not having emotional attachments because of residential boarding schools, and those all lead to a set of factors that make young children susceptible to groomers. That's what they're called, groomers, where they lure these people into feeling like they're being loved and cared for, and then all of a sudden they turn on them. And so that's one thing that we need to help our young people don't fall for those groomers. And also they have scams where they put out a call for models or casting call, and then they kind of groom them, and so check out those places. Make sure they're legit.
You raise an interesting point there, and one that I've always kind of wondered and pondered a bit. Young girls, they seem to be the prettiest of our nations, and let people define that any way they want, but it looks like in the photos of the missing and murdered girls that they are all very attractive, and so are they more of a target than anyone else? Do you think? Is there any way people look at it? I mean, would you agree with what I was just kicking around there? I mean, is that ridiculous, or does it make a little sense?
No, because they do have that high. We do have those high risk factors for being groomed, and then all my family tells me I'm a beautiful girl, so I'll answer this ad for a model, and they don't think anything about it when it's at a hotel. Come to this hotel room, and we're having all these models come in and offer them a drink. Hey, here's some water.
That's it.
And
the roofie time.
And then I've seen, and I'm the paranoid mom who's always scanning and always looking. I see the moms on social media posting a picture of the bad man who almost followed their daughter into the bathroom at Walmart. And I'm like, why are you not hitting that sucker with a can of corn over the head? Am I the only mom out there that will just throw down crazy in Walmart and not care? But I see that, and they say that they go and call the manager over. I'm like, if a creeper is following you around Walmart,
I'm gonna do 911.
Go back crap on them.
Well, and again, there's a lot of scams I've heard of, and sadly to say, at Walmart parking lots and in these shopping mall parking lots,
the marketplace, meet there and buy things kind of situations.
And then, or they might do something to their car, put some. I saw someone post about there was a flyer on their car, and when they were taking it off, a man approached them from behind. I mean, I'm gonna drive off with that stuck on my windshield and then get down the street and I mean, they do things to delay you from getting in your car so they can snatch you. Is the bottom line, sort of.
Really, a lot of personal awareness of your surroundings seems like it would go
Always
a long
be aware
way.
of your surroundings. Yeah.
And I'm super curious about what it's like to go out and search for people. And since I have you in the studio, I have to ask, if you're looking for someone who's reported missing by their family and they were last seen with this mean boyfriend versus maybe an autistic child has wandered off, or maybe an elder who might not be able to interpret their surroundings, or what are the differences in going through those searches?
The profiles, because dementia patients, they'll, like a different profile for them is they'll usually walk towards the sunset, or there's a ping pong effect that they do. They might walk into something and bounce off of it. So you got to, and then the autism side of it, things that bother them, like textures, noises they did like, noises they didn't like, woods, you got a profile on that. And then the first one you gave me with an abusive boyfriend, did they like to hang out at the bar? Did they drink? Did they do more than just drink? Did they have drugs? So there's a lot of things you have to put into that. But was he Caucasian or was he Native American? Mm-hmm. Because when we hear that they're Native American, it gives us hope because we know that they most likely didn't put them into sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. But when we find out that their boyfriends are Caucasian, that's when time is most important because they're 9 out of 10 more likely to put them into sex trafficking.
Now, you've been on a couple of searches for Lindsay
Faith Lindsay.
Yeah, Faith Lindsay, there we go.
Her boyfriend is in custody right now.
Yeah, how are those different?
I don't know how much of that case I can talk about because it's still an ongoing
Well, no,
case.
the search, though. The search.
And in that situation, there
We
was...
have to be careful there.
Yeah, yeah. There was just sites that was given to us that
And
could
you
have been...
canvass? Do you just like
well,
they show on television,
we have
every 3 feet somebody...
Yeah, they get in lines. You could have lines of 40
Hear
people,
that?
and
That's
50
the sound
people
of
to
hope
8
being
people,
killed
depending on
by-
how many people show up for the search, and you spread out that way. But we have Sartopia maps, too, that also could give us, like, where this guy could get... It shows the whole area geographically. So, say there's a cliff over here, and this guy just pulled up with a truck. There's no way he's going to get in here. There's no way, what's the most likely? So, with those statistics and the profile, even of the suspect,
the most likely place
we can most likely
Okay.
come up with those areas. And the profiles that Sartopia and Search and Rescues have and these trainings they have, it narrows it down to almost right there. So I encourage everybody to take this training if you're interested in search and rescue.
Before we run out of time, we're going to be getting into the last few minutes of the show where we'll do announcements. Can you talk a little bit about the page that you are an administrator on?
Missing Flowers. That was put on by Susie Desball and some other. She's from Arizona. She's doing missing murdered Indigenous women, missing murdered Indigenous people. But she has started a database there because there is no database, as we've talked about already, and with us. And she's working with Oklahoma for since she started the database with the ones we've already had missing and recovered and rescued, and so that's a big step. I'm kind of on it, kind of not. I don't really respond to certain things she does, and other women do that, but it makes me it keeps me aware of what's going on and where we can put in things that we need to put in here in Oklahoma.
When we were talking at the Capitol, you kind of clued me in on something that I'd never thought about as a journalist before, and journalists were really great about okay, there's an issue, spread the word. But you mentioned how you would like to see people who, once a person's found, take the information down.
Oh, absolutely. That's that's just respectful, professional. You don't want the victims to keep having to see what they went through. They're going to have enough memories on their own. And with the children, those children are going to get older. So you really don't want that around. And some people, once it's on the internet, it's on the internet. But if you can help from them having to see it all the time and prevent it, and it's just a...
And there are countries now who are adopting laws that say that just because it's on the internet once, it doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. Like in Europe, you are not on there forever. When a news story is done, they have to take things down.
Yeah.
It's some kind of, I forget the name of the law, but that was just something that really kind of...
But nothing's taken down until we have updates on it, and then we will, because we're still missing someone right now who's contacted law enforcement but hasn't made a facial contact with him, and that you can't be taken down until, because for all we know, somebody's making them make those phone calls.
Right.
So we have to have a visual of them. They have to contact their local law agency if they're ever on these and they want them taken down. That's a part of this, too.
But it's a good point. I thought that would be a great policy for local journalists to start adopting, is not to leave these.
Because the victims are having enough time of rebuilding their lives. They don't need it put in their face every day.
Yeah, definitely. Just a big recap before we go into our announcements. If you are listening and if you would like to know how you can help out missing murdered Indigenous people and improving the outcomes, there are the pieces of legislation. One of them is going to subcommittee, and if you would like to reach out to those committee members, give them a call, let them know you want the legislation passed. That one's for cleat training. But the two that are still up in the air, Red Alert is still up in the air. We still don't know what that's going to come to, and IDA's law is still hasn't made it to that committee level yet. It's not going to be considered unless people get on the phone, give them a call at the Capitol, let them know you want that. There was a few other laws about photo collection for kids. Could be a good thing. It would be a great accompaniment to having information on hand that could be usable by law enforcement. Give them a call, reach out to your representatives.
And something a little more basic, perhaps, for anyone out there who is perhaps in a situation like that. What are the resources that they can turn to? I know there's like perhaps a national helpline, and then there's some here in the state. What are those resources?
Well, do you have the Family Violence Prevention Program number? I'm sorry, I was not prepared for that right now.
Well, they can call the Mvskoke Creek Nation
Yes.
Family Violence Prevention.
Yeah.
They have the resources on hand.
And any of these groups we've mentioned here in Oklahoma, and if they're and even if they're out of state, we still have contact probably with somebody that's in your state that can come help you and get you out of that situation. You can call Warriors Women's Society, AIM Indian Territory, MMIW, Capital.
Sharice Redbone's number is 405-339-3274. She's the Indian capital and can connect you. I know the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center has a 24-hour crisis line that they can help you connect with other resources. So I apologize, I was not ready for that question.
I didn't have that on my outline either, but it was a good question. Good information to have.
Just being a vicious reporter here, catch you off guard with a question you weren't ready for. But is the situation, in your own personal assessments, getting any better now that there's more awareness of it? I notice even national news agencies have picked it up, and it's been in paper, and I don't know whether or not the TV stations are still doing poverty porn kind of thing, but I've noticed more of the discussion of this issue or presentation of it more in the public view. Is that something you would agree with?
I totally agree. In fact, especially when the Department of Justice announced Operation Lady Justice, which was the task force that they're coordinating, and Oklahoma has an appointment, a task force appointed here because of our status having so many Native American people. And again, the president has also expressed Native American, and I'm just saying it started, it's from the top down, as everything usually does. So once they started showing some interest, now there's been national headlines.
Well, and I really like what Representative Dolan said when he spoke at that press conference and said that the reason he wanted to sponsor that bill was because he had the choice to create another task force to go out and do whatever for a year, but he wanted to take immediate action. And I had got on the soapbox about task forces, like in an administrative setting, like what they can actually do, but
they can only make recommendations.
Right, and so
this year, as a searcher, this year alone has been a huge leap forward with these women, bringing it to them and taking it, to the Capitol. It's just a huge leap forward in the awareness we've been able to get in the groups they've put together to help these families. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. So to answer your question, it's definitely a huge leap forward this year. And if if they try not to pass these bills, we'll come up with something else. We'll do something else. Mvskoke Nation might even start its own task force. We've talked about that. So we could at least make flyers and look for our own citizens.
Well, I'm curious now. You've been, let's say, a searcher for how long now?
So with
On your own.
Probably a year now on my own. Yeah.
Well, in that period of time, do you have numbers of successes versus numbers of still pending kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah. And the ones still pending get you the most. Edith J. Edith.
Maybe let's not get into names if we.
We were going to have another search. Speaking of one that was pending, the end of March for Wesley Still Smoking, and that'll be in the Locust Grove area. So that'll be the spring break weekend.
Mm-hmm.
She's working on that right now, and I think we're going to contact the commissioner judge, so we can have permission to go in on those properties, and we don't have to jump through too many loopholes. We'll just go straight to him.
Okay. Well,
how many successes in the last year?
Thank you.
We've let me see, between the children also that we've gotten back, I think we've had at least 8 successful
That's good.
rescues that weren't recoveries or something like that, and some of those being children as well.
We thank you for all that work you put in.
Well, it's not just, it's everybody. I'd like to thank anybody listening to this, because that's really how all this has gotten out
If
there.
you see something, say something.
Say something. Post it, social media, because we're not getting the support that we need from local agencies.
I've seen those posts where the person who's witnessed something weird, like the little kid who might be walking and they know that this is my neighborhood and that's not her mom's car or his mom's car.
Yep.
And those are the ones when that person takes that immediate action and reports right then and there, that you seem to see that comes
You have a better
to
chance,
a more positive thing, like they didn't get out of the town, they didn't get out of the neighborhood, they didn't get out
I'd
of the
rather
city.
catch them before they leave their sidewalk in front of their house, until they're
Or even
on a
that
poster.
dad who was like maybe on watch, who just stepped up and knew that kid was being harassed and came over and assisted. Because these predators know and they watch those patterns, and that's when they pounce in and take advantage, it seems like. Gary's giving me the signals, so I'm like trying to like read and see what I need to do next.
Okay, well, that's fairly simple here. We're running out of time.
We're running out. Okay.
Wow, it does go by fast.
Yeah, we have a lot of guests who say that. Like, wow, I could have done that all afternoon.
Yeah.
Well,
Got
maybe
nervous
you
for
could,
2
but
days.
not me.
Nervous for 2 days and coming, and it went by fast.
Yeah, well, that was fun. Now, I'll wait till I get on your tail.
Well, I'm just really excited that you guys could both make it. I feel like some stories needed to be really told, and when they come together like it did, I just asked Ngozi yesterday if he could do this, and he just said, okay, I can make it work.
And
It means that it's meant to happen, and you guys both just kind of merged in together, and we got it done. So thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you, Ngozi.
normally I wouldn't, but this was so important to us and to our nation, and seeing how we had citizens just here recently come up missing who were rescued and recovered. This is very important to us. So, whatever I had to do, and I'd like to thank you all for doing this for us,
Yes.
and hearing us and taking the time to come up to the Capitol and letting the voices of the victims and families be heard.
Thank God. Okay, well,
No.
we're going to have to move on here.
Okay.
And we do have actually a growing pile of community announcements.
There's a lot of stuff happening.
But, I know this is some early notice, but festival vendor applications are available. Now, they became available on February 7th, and this is for the Creek Festival, the big one. So if you're interested in being a vendor at the event, you better get a hold of the folks there. You might want to give Tourism and Recreation a call, 732-7992.
All right, the Mvskoke Creek Nation's, the College of Mvskoke Nation Health and Wellness presents Talk Saves Lives. There's lunch and learn about what suicide is, who it affects, what we know about it, and what can be done to prevent it. It's followed by an optional mini love meditation. That's going to be happening February 19th from 12 to 1 p.m. at the Student Center, room 107. To register an RSVP, connect with Ashley Allen, and the number is 918-549-2845.
Okay, former wear drive for the Department of Education and Training, and they're collecting gently used formal wear. A lot of upcoming proms and events for our school kids, and they may need the formal clothes. So give them a call, 918-732-7743.
Muskogean History Symposium is happening on March 20th through the 21st at the Mound Building, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Save the date. If you want some more information about those different presentations that they're going to have, you can contact 918-732-7733.
Okay, the season is almost upon us here. The 7th annual Eufaula Canadian Tribal Town Wild Onion Dinner coming up on March the 14th from 11 to 2 at the Eufaula Indian Community Center in Eufaula. $10 a person. Ouch, but the food is worth it. Okay, we got another one there too, Concharty, which is always a good one. Concharty United Methodist Church Wild Onion Dinner, Saturday, March the 28th from 11 till 3. And that's just south of Bixby and north of Okmulgee. Adults 12, children 10. 918-366-8450. Okay, what do we got?
Mvskoke Creek Nation Addiction Conference is happening March 24th through the 26th. Topics include alcohol, methamphetamine, opioid, marijuana, gambling, pornography, nicotine recovery treatment and wellness. It's going to be happening at the River Spirit Casino Resort Conference Center. If you need some more information, you are encouraged to contact let's see, registration is going to be done by a Behavioral Health and Substance Abuse Services at 918-758-1910.
Okay, for Angel and myself, Gary Fife saying thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Madot.